Hello and welcome to another episode of Valley Sports Telegram presents the Sports Telegram. As always, I'm Arshavir Saryan with Kenny Hodges. Hope you enjoyed our baseball quarter poll wrap-ups, taking a look at where the American League and the National League are. If you haven't watched it, go ahead, hit the search. It'll probably be in the recommended. Take a look. There's definitely some good stuff there. Today, we're going to break down the two remaining conference finals. We've got the Heat barely holding on to life against the Celtics and the Vegas Golden Knights in hockey. Not sure how they're losing to Dallas, not showing up, but we will roll right into that. First off, Kenny, how's your Memorial Day weekend?
I mean, it's going well. Busy as usual. A lot going on, but this is also one of those times of year that's always fun because when you get to Memorial Day weekend, you got baseball going, you got all the sports going, you got WNBA going, which we'll dive into at some point in the next couple of weeks. What's going on in the WNBA and the level of play they've started with, and most importantly, usually when you get to this time of year, we're rolling towards the end of conference finals right before the NBA finals start. So it's been a lot of great action, and we're getting ready to dive into all of it.
We are. I'm gonna save the NBA finals for last, just because there's a lot of meat on that bone. There's a lot that we were talking about off air, and things we're gonna kind of get into. So, first in the NHL, the Florida Panthers are resting their bumps and bruises after bruising their way through everybody. Waiting on the winner of the Vegas Golden Knights and the Dallas Stars. I thought this one was pretty much wrapped up. Vegas was up 3-0. They looked really good in all those games. And Dallas just kind of looked like it was running out of gas. And I'm not sure if Vegas kind of let up and kind of lost that killer instinct. But, Dallas came back, won an OT game to make it 3-1. And then Vegas just didn't show up in game 5. And now we got a 3-2 series heading back to Dallas. Jake Ottinger's getting hot. And that's the one thing in hockey, and you and I were talking about it earlier, and we know it. If a goalie gets hot, he can wreck an entire playoffs, not just a series, an entire playoffs. We saw it in the early 2000s when John Sebastian Jaguar with the Ducks, he won the MVP. The Conn Smythe, he was the playoffs MVP, and the Ducks didn't win the cup. That's how crazy his playoffs run was. They lost to New Jersey that year. We saw it when Carolina won the cup. We saw it in 2012 when the Kings won the cup, and Jonathan Quick stood on his head for most of those playoffs. And so it's not unusual for a goalie to turn things around as soon as they get locked in. And he might be there. And I'm not quite sure if it was a combination of Vegas taking their foot off the gas and Jake Ottinger finally taking advantage of that and, seeing the puck like a beach ball. But where we are now, there's going to be game 6, and that's going to be on Monday.
It's weird, right? When you look at how this series is sort of played out, you're right. Did Vegas take their foot off the gas? Because like we had talked about, that Jamie Benn incident where it felt like there was a moment there of Dallas's kind of completely lost their cool because Vegas was playing so well. And it felt like maybe this is where Dallas sort of bows out. They, he got a game misconduct. They went on to lose that game. Now you're looking, it's a 3-0 series. Maybe this is where it ends. But to be fair to the Dallas Stars, that sort of has felt like a tipping point for them because they've been the competitive spirit with this squad, and even their physicality has sort of ramped up since that incident. Yeah, they lost that game because now you're without your captain and the game plan sort of goes out the window, right? Because of what happened in that game. But since then, what you've seen from Dallas is Vegas might get a lead and Dallas would immediately comes right back. So there has been no quit in this team. And then on top of that, when you look at what Ottinger has done, where he's sort of been streaky in the postseason, but this game 5, I mean, Vegas had some, golden opportunities in the slot that normally that puck's in the back of the net, and this guy's stopping everything. Once they got that game back to 2-2, that was it for the Golden Knights offense. They had nothing. They couldn't get anything by him. He completely stifled anything they tried to do. Whether they were just throwing pucks in front of the net, just trying to find one and jam one through, they just couldn't get anything by the guy. So now you're looking at a situation where it was 3-0, now it's 3-2. We're going back to Dallas with a hot goalie. There is a very real possibility we could be sitting here looking at a game 7 with a hot goalie at home, where the game plan then, if you can get there, because who knows, Vegas might go to Dallas and Jack Eichel might find a goal or two, which he's sort of been non-existent. But if you go back home having lost 3 straight, you better score first is all I'm going to say at that point, because it gets real tight then. So it's just really intriguing. And mind you, we'll get into it on the NBA side, but in the NHL side, we've seen this before. Like, this is where in baseball and basketball, coming back from 3-0 deficits are sort of a rare air in terms of you seeing that in the postseason. But we've seen this in hockey. And a lot of times it starts with who is minding the net. And Ottinger is getting red hot at the right time for Dallas, and they've got a real shot to pull this thing off.
We've seen it. I mean, we've only seen it maybe 5 or 6 times in the history of, the Stanley Cup playoffs. But it has been done most recently. I don't know if it's been done since the Kings did it in 2014 against the Sharks, but that was in the first round. That was not a conference final.
Yeah.
And it's only happened once in the Cup final, and that was Boston against Vancouver. And that we were talking about Vancouver being a team that lacked physicality, and Boston just bullied them out of the playoffs. But I want to backtrack on the one thing you mentioned. Jamie Benn just boneheaded, right? But it seemed like that rallied Dallas after they lost the game, because then they went in and they're like, "Well, Cap, what did your captain just do? Right? You're not playing well. You're already down. They were already down in that game, and he just decided he was going to let loose. Okay, he let his frustrations out. We're not playing our capabilities. This team how do I do this? I'm pissed. I'm going to take it out on this guy.
Yeah.
Took it out on him. He got a 2-game suspension. And lo and behold, the 2 games he missed, Dallas won. And now on Monday, tomorrow night, he's back.
He's back in his building.
So that's a huge boost for Dallas. And I don't expect them to have that kind of sigh of relief that, captain's back. Jamie Benn, we're going to, here we go. No, I think that's just going to ramp up their intensity even more. Because now it's, hey, he's going to walk in, and knowing the way hockey players are, he's going to walk in, and it's not going to be, hey, we won kind of for you. He's going to come in and say, I love the way you guys stepped up. And he's probably already said it, right? But now he's going to be in pads, in uniform, stepping on the ice, and it's going to be, I'm here, and we're going to take this to another level. And that scares me for Vegas.
For a couple of reasons. One, that the momentum that Dallas has already gathered, now your captain's back, right? So there's a sort of another emotional level to the boys kind of picked you up. Now let's go Let's go get that. Let's go get the effing thing. But on the other side, for Vegas, now you start worrying about the composure of the moment, right? It's going to be a hot building. Also, what this guy did in that game 3, this is the first time these guys are going to see him back on the ice. Are they going to be able to collect themselves emotionally and not get out of what the game plan is? Because there's going to want to be some retribution. There's going to want to be some get back. You don't do what you did. You don't cross check. I mean, we don't see things like that in WWE on a weekly basis, what he did in that moment. There's no way there aren't players on that Knights team, including Mark Stone himself, that's not like it's one of those situations where I almost feel like we could see the gloves drop immediately as soon as the game starts. Just to we need to get this out of the way because you go after what you did. No, there's going to have to be a response because that's how hockey players operate, right? But is this the moment to really do that? You're trying to clinch a spot in the Stanley Cup Finals. Are they going to be able to kind of comport themselves emotionally in that building with Ben back on the ice and really play the game that really got them to this point? Because you could be playing in the Dallas Sands if you're over emotional and lose yourself in that moment. And you will find yourself down 2-0 after the first period. And now you really have a situation on your hands.
And there's no guarantee this is going to happen, but if they get Ben to drop the gloves on the first couple shifts, if it happens fast, that's good for Vegas.
Yeah, that's true.
Especially if they handle business.
Yeah.
If they drop the gloves with Jamie Benn, he knocks him out. or it's a very handy kind of he dominated the scrap.
Yeah.
Right? I'm sorry, Vegas, you're done.
This could be, because the emotional letdown of that being the outcome, that could be,
But if I'm Cassidy, right? Yeah, I want you to make him pay. It's not going to be something from the 80s and 90s where you send out your goon and you're like, take care of him. No, hey, go out. Tap him, let him know he's got retribution coming, and if he wants to go, But otherwise, you're going to make it hard on him for 60 minutes. But
I just worry about the idea of I'm so hell bent on getting a PCU at the blue line. Now I whiff, and now it's odd numbers going back the other way because it was more important to be physical in that moment than to play sound. Those are the things that you worry about when you're over emotional, because especially with vitriol towards one or two guys that you want to get back on,
Yeah, I see that. But Cassidy is a disciplined coach, and I mean, you look at the way he had that team playing up until the suspension, and I don't see them kind of running around to hit him, but every time he's near the boards, he's going to get pounded in. You're going to have forearms up in his neck, maybe not in his face, but they're going to be up, and it's just going to be a living hell for him. But again, how do they take that and put it into the game so they don't get taken out of the game and lose? Only time will tell. We won't know until puck drops tomorrow evening. So, but it's a hell of a series now, and there's definitely some storylines and things to keep track of.
Yeah, and the last thing before we move on that I'll just add to that is we talked a lot coming into this postseason about guys like Connor McDavid and starting to get into sort of legacy talk about where they are in the pantheon of how great are you? How are we to judge your greatness? This is one of those moments here in Game 6 where I think a lot of eyes go to Jack Eichel, who's still relatively young in his career, but we do consider him to be one of the better players in the league. This is one of those moments. You haven't really done enough to help your team clinch, This is one of those moments where you've got to show up now. If you are the guy that we think you are, going into that building in Game 6, you got to show up. I need at least 2 goals from Jack Eichel tomorrow night, or else I don't know where I'm looking at you in terms of that level or that tier of top players in the game.
It's fair, and you name drop, so I'm gonna carry on that, and then we'll segue out. The McDavids of the world, his legacy is essentially secure in that he didn't lose the series to Vegas.
Yeah.
It was the others. It was those others are the reason they beat the Kings, right? And that's something, if we haven't gone in depth on later, we will. But those others were the reason they lost to Vegas, because the power play was still ridiculous, but it was the role players that got outplayed by the role players of Vegas. All right. Now role players, that actually sets me to go into this NBA Eastern Conference final. Because if a role player hit an open 3, we'd be having a different conversation right now. And a role player,
just one of them, by the way, just one,
and another role player got a tip in with 1/10 of a second left, and now we're talking Game 7 in NBA. No team has ever come down from 0-3 to win an NBA playoff series. I don't even know if they've ever forced a Game 7. I hadn't actually looked it up because I didn't expect there to be this conversation today. But still, this is unprecedented. And if a team had forced a Game 7, there's been only a handful. Because like we said, in the NHL, there's only a handful of teams that came back and won. Even less in the NBA that have come back and forced it. But yeah, this is a game that leads a lot of questions, right? Jimmy Butler still did Jimmy Butler things, even though he only did it for half of the game, second half. Duncan Robinson, my man, missed 2 wide open threes at the end of the game. And Boston walks out of Miami with their chest puffed out because they're going back to the Garden. And thinking they've got all the momentum. It's not like, oh, we won a game, we're still alive. No. Oh, we won 2 games, we got a chance. No, they won 3. And now they're going home, going to sleep in their bed and walk out looking to make history.
It's amazing because the conversation that we were having off air about Miami's postseason run, and to throw the Lakers in there too as well. The idea that this was the first year that, in my opinion, now it's concrete. The play-in tournament is here to stay because now we have seen success from teams coming from that play-in tournament and winning rounds into playoff in the actual playoffs. So you look at Miami looked terrible in that first play-in game against Atlanta. They looked terrible in the first half against Chicago in the last play-in game for the 8 seed. And you really didn't look at their prospects knowing they were going to see Giannis and the Bucks in the first round and think that they were going to do much of anything. And they not only won, but they sort of dominated the first round against the Bucks. And then they dominated the Knicks in the second round in that series. The only game that the Knicks actually won in that series was the one that Jimmy Butler didn't play with the ankle. And then you look at the way they started the Eastern Conference Finals going up 3-0. And now you look at a situation where now they're going to play a Game 7. And because they are blowing a 3-0 lead, I don't know if this doesn't look like a colossal failure if they don't get to the NBA Finals, and which is insane to be having that conversation about a team that was the 8th seed and barely got into the play-in. So it tells you how magical his run has been, but also how fickle history can be depending on how you fare. Because if we're talking about Miami losing in Game 7 in a series that was back and forth, and these guys, when everyone's talked about all these undrafted players on their roster, and Spo being a puppet master and coaching his ass off, and Jimmy Butler playing out of his mind and putting his name in conversations with postseason performers like Kobe and Jordan in terms of the stuff that he does, and they just lose, similar to how they did last year where they lost like just on a shot, we'd be like, one of the best postseason runs we've ever seen. If they lose this game, though, after being up 3-0, and then especially have Game 6 played out at the end, I don't think anybody looks at this postseason run other than, wow, what a blown opportunity to get to an NBA final, because it was right there. It was right there.
Yeah. And I had to pull it up. So I'll get to that in a second. The commentary about this team is definitely going to be they were the first because they won the day before the Lakers won, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they were the first team from the play-in to get out of the first round. Okay. And they deserve that. They were the first. Not only were they the first to get into the conference final, and they were a game away from being the first to get to an NBA final. And there's a lot of things to like. Spoelstra has been, he has completely eliminated any narrative that might have still lingered from the LeBron days. Yes, that was a long time ago, right? He's been the coach of that team for a very long time.
Mm-hmm.
But you're watching what he's done with the roster and how he's he has had a hand in constructing the roster, because you create a roster in the image of your coach.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's how your coach is going to get the most out of them. And they've done that, and this team has responded, and they're right there. But Boston didn't want to die. I mean, Game 4 was not a collapse by Miami. Boston didn't want to die. Game 5 was not a collapse by Miami. Boston said, we're not losing on home court. And, and then we get to Game 6, and, we said it, poor Duncan Robinson. And you got a tip in with 0.1 second. So, at this point, Boston didn't want to die. And now Boston becomes the fourth team ever to come back from an 0-3 deficit.
Mm-hmm.
There was only 3 before them, and now they're number 4.
Mm-hmm.
And if I'm the Heat, I don't think the narrative changes. I still think they've had an amazing, amazing season. You kind of tip your hat to Boston. And, I mean, we all thought Boston would be here. Everybody thought Boston would be in the conference finals. Question was, who were they going to be facing? And is that the team they're going to get past? It was initially thought it was supposed to be Milwaukee and Boston.
Mm-hmm.
Not Milwaukee and Boston, clearly. But this is that moment now. Tomorrow, Game 7. And you've got some legacies on the line. Like Tatum and Smart and the rest of that team, there's definitely some legacies on the line here.
Mm-hmm.
They've done something amazing to force this Game 7. Now they got a chance to put that in history and be the first.
Yeah. So there's a couple of things too that are really interesting about what could transpire here in this Game 7. when you look at Miami, starting with Miami, when you look at Miami, is it simply just they've squeezed as much juice out of this group as they can? And is it enough? Because now it's funny. One of my favorite journalist personalities, Dan Le Batard, has been jokingly saying on my Miami local radio, do we miss Tyler Hero yet? Because Tyler Hero got hurt at the way beginning of the postseason in that Milwaukee series. And the initial thought was, well, this is the third guy. Like, Bam and Jimmy, but Tyler Hero's the guy in the offense who can also get his own shot, who can get hot, who can carry the offense. If one of those two guys are having an off night, where do we go for that production? And you looked at Max Strus, and Gabe Vincent has been, phenomenal this postseason for them. Even those first three games were laughable the way he shot the ball against Boston, where even Boston was looking around like, what are we supposed to do? This guy is pulling a Steph Curry and coming three dribbles past half court, and it's not even touching the rim. And then Duncan Robinson giving them contributions when, if you know anything about how people feel about him in South Florida, I felt terrible for him yesterday because he has been a polarizing figure in and around that organization for the last couple of years because people have wanted him. If you're as good a shooter as you're supposed to be, you can't come up small so often the way they have. And he's sort of played himself out of Spo's rotation because he plays, quite frankly, at times like he's scared of the moment. So it's going to be interesting to see if they can get those others to do it one more time to sort of get out of this scenario they've played themselves into. On the other side for Boston, while what they have done has been heroic in terms of it would have been very easy to play the way they played those first three games and just sort of kind of whimper out. But you've seen their two stars, Tatum and Brown, really sort of pick up the pace. And also you got to throw Marcus Smart in there as well. He has been phenomenal in this series. Even when they weren't playing well, he was like the only guy who was playing well for Boston and trying to keep them afloat. But when you look at this core group, if they don't get back to the NBA Finals, there's still an argument to be made that maybe Jaylen Brown is on the move somewhere, because I don't know, because even with that game yesterday, I don't know if you felt this way, because I felt this way when I was watching it down the stretch. When you look at Miami, even though Jimmy Butler at one point was shooting 3 for 19, playing terribly, awful, you knew when that game got down to one or two possessions, there was no freaking body touching that ball for Miami but him. And he was going to make something happen. He hit a crate. He hit a three. Man couldn't throw the ball in the ocean yesterday. And then we get inside of 2.5 minutes to go, and he knocks down a cold-blooded three that brings them back within a possession. And I think, or he cut it from 7-4. And then you see the way he knocked those free throws down at the end. He is the guy. When you look at Boston, Tatum's supposed to be the guy, but there are moments where he doesn't even touch the ball. They go whole possessions and he doesn't touch the basketball. Then there are times when, okay, they're sending double teams at Tatum. Where's Brown? He's not aggressive enough. Marcus Smart is, even last night, that shot, Tatum didn't take that shot. Brown didn't take that shot. It was Marcus Smart who took the three. That's not the guy who's supposed to take the shot to save your season. And then thank God White was in the position he was in because he saved your bacon, or else had he not got that tip in, what are we talking about today? Why didn't either one of your two stars find a way to get to that basketball and take that shot to save your season? Is the conversation that we got saved from by a tip in with 1 sec with a rebound putback with 0.1 on the clock. So if they don't win and get to the finals, because it doesn't matter. Whoever wins this, I don't think is beating this Denver team. Jokic is in his final form. That man is a monster. No one's stopping him. He can do Larry Bird one backhand step backs over his head. No one's beating that guy in the finals, in my opinion. But if Boston doesn't get there, we have to have a serious conversation about, can this team continue to coexist if your two best guys, one does not distinguish himself as actually being the number one guy.
I honestly think there's there's things brewing under the surface in Boston. It's kind of becoming clear. And when push comes to shove, that's when you're going to see it. And it almost caused a collapse yesterday because they weren't on the page. They just couldn't communicate. Neither of them really wanted that basketball.
Terrible possessions in the last 3 minutes of that game. Terrible possessions.
And that, unfortunately, it dooms your team. I mean, think about it. Think about the all-time greats, right? Kobe wanted that ball. You're going to give me that ball. Jimmy wants the ball. They give him the ball, right? LeBron in his prime, he was the only one who touched that basketball, right? Jordan, if I didn't already say him, I don't remember. But, like, we can go decade and decade. Larry Bird, Magic, even though Magic wasn't a shooter, he had the ball because he made things happen. So you get into that last 2 minutes, who's got the ball? The leader of your team, because that's the person who's going to orchestrate it. That's the person who's going to make it happen. It's not happening in Boston.
There is a very famous conversation now at this point, because both the gentlemen have admitted to it happening, between Dwayne Wade and LeBron James on a yacht after they lost that final series to Dallas, where Dwayne Wade said he said to LeBron very candidly, if I have to play Robin, your ass has to be Batman. If you're supposed to be the guy, you have to be him. Because we can't win like this with both of us like, oh, you take it, you take. No, if you're the number one guy, if this thing runs through you, if you're the captain of this ship, it's fine. My legacy is already set here in Miami. I already got a ring. You don't have one. This is what Dwayne Wade said he told LeBron. I already have a ring. They already call this Wade County down here. You don't have a ring. So if you came down here for us to win and you're supposed to be the best player on the planet, then damn it, be the best player on the planet. I'll play number two. I don't have a problem deferring, but I'm only deferring if you're going to step up and be the guy so we can win. That is what needs to happen with these two gentlemen. Because to me, when you look at the two of them, and Jaylen Brown is a very great, he is a very good player. But Jason Tatum is the stir that stirs that drink. He is a 6'9" dude with a 6'11" wingspan. You saw even in this last game at times what he could do on both ends of the floor. It has to go through him. Now, there's some improvements he still needs to make in his game. He's way too sloppy with the basketball. He turns it over too much. He dribbles the ball off his own foot way too many times for a guy that's supposed to be a star in this league. But those are things that can be corrected and will be corrected if he accepts his role as the guy. You have to accept that you are that dog. Because if they don't, if we don't do that, then this is the ceiling for this team. Is almost being good enough to win a championship.
If it was going to happen, it would have happened by now, in my opinion. And if he needs someone to slap him around verbally and tell him, you need to step your ass up and be the guy, then do it. I mean, hell, I could have sworn he had that moment when he dropped 50 in Game 7.
Yes.
He was like, oh, Curry, that's cute. You dropped 50. I'm going to drop 51.
Yeah.
Like I thought he was there. And then he goes and pulls this.
Because remember when we talked about the conference finals preview, that was what my concern was. My concern was, can he keep that? That pocket that he found in that Game 7? Because there have been too many times, even in the first couple of rounds that they were winning. You saw it in the Philly series. He has a tendency to just disappear. Yesterday in that game, when they needed him to really take over in that second half and put their foot on the neck, he didn't score until the fourth quarter. He went MIA again. He didn't score a point in the third quarter. I don't even think he took a shot. And I'm like, your best player cannot go an entire quarter without taking a shot. Jimmy Butler couldn't hit the side of a bar. He took 20 of them bitches yesterday. You gotta if you are the guy, and I kept saying, I'm like, Jimmy, you got to stop this. You keep going into 3 people in the lane, but that's the mentality, right? If I'm the guy that has to carry this thing, I gotta continue to put up shots. So it's just one of those things where you're right. It's fair to question if he has it in him to do it consistently. But because in the league, there's a lot of guys who can drop 50, because that's the separator. The separator is, yeah, there are a lot of guys. We see Dame Lillard do it. We see Ja do it. We see a lot of guys can go and have a crazy night where they drop 51. But in the biggest moments when your team needs you the most, can you put the team on your back and carry them to the promised land? He still has to prove that.
And he does. And as we start to take this thing home, it really comes down to, what he's going to do tomorrow night. Is he going to be the guy? Is he going to step up and pull another one of these Game 7 miracles? If he does, then okay, maybe he actually is starting to have that moment where he is the guy. But we know exactly what he's going to be up against. He's going to be up against Jimmy freaking Butler, who is the guy in Miami.
Yeah.
He knows it. He acts like it. They know it. So you've got the cohesive unit who knows, and they let the straw that stirs the drink do his work, versus, am I 1A or 1B? And if it's a 1A, 1B situation, it's not going to work. You need 1 and 2. And right before I wrap it up, I need to say the 1A, 1B, we saw how it doesn't work with the Lakers. Because LeBron is no longer number 1. He says he's no longer the number 1. He had that conversation with AD, and I was trying to save this for later, but I talked myself into it, and I'll try to keep it quick so that way we can go in depth later. AD didn't play like a number 1, even though LeBron told him he has to be the number 1, and then Bron will be the 2. AD kept trying to play 1A, 1B, like in 2020. That doesn't work anymore there. But now, see, you look at Boston, I don't think they're not on the same page, Tatum and Brown, to be a 1A, 1B. You clearly have to step up and say, I'm the number 1, and I'm making this happen. If Tatum does it tomorrow night, then here we go. Right? He's doing what he needs to do to be the leader of that team. If they try to go 1A, 1B, and neither of them really knows who's A and who's B, we got Miami in the finals. That's how I see it.
Yeah, and for Duncan Robinson's sake, Miami has to win that game, because he's gonna have to find a new team, because people in South Florida already have been sort of sick of the idea that, like, this team kept you around because in that Heat culture, I hate saying that. In the Heat culture, it's always been about every part of this machine does its job. If you are getting minutes and you're on the floor, there are specific things that are expected of you, and everyone puts in their prerequisite work, and you all do your job. You have one job, sir. Your primary job is, when the defense is stupid enough to leave you open, you knock those down. And he had 2 point-blank shots. For him, they are point-blank because he's supposed to be a knockdown shooter. He had 2 shots where I don't know where Boston's defense was, and he didn't hit either of them. So if they don't win this game, I don't know if he can save his image in South Florida, because that's going to be the 2 images. The image that you will remember from this series is TNT showing that shot from behind him where there's barely a Celtic in the shot. It's just him. It's almost like he's shooting in an empty gym, And when he front rims that three, and you could see the crowd deflate, it was like, oh man, this could go bad. So, I mean, we're in for a good one. There are definitely legacies on the line, and more importantly, Nikola Jokic is sitting back at home saying, "Good." While you're at it, go triple overtime, because whoever wins now gets to get on a plane in 2 days and come get on the racetrack with us up in the altitude when we're going to run you out of the building. So good luck to either one of these teams who finds a way out of this situation.
Yeah. And I mean, we'll be there for it. We'll be watching, and we'll have our finals preview probably Wednesday after chewing on what happens Monday night. But that basically wraps it for us. And we've got some really big games coming up on Monday night. We've got Celtics Heat Game 7 and Knights Stars Game 6. Thankfully, they don't start at the same time, so it's staggered, and we can actually watch both. But yeah, we will be back. We'll give you our finals preview, because there's going to be a finals preview. Game 7's tomorrow, and we might have 2 finals previews at the same time, depending on how that goes. But as always, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. If you like what you hear, hit the subscribe button. Hit the bell for notifications. We're trying to put this out as often as we can for you guys. It's going to be a fun summer. There's a lot of things we got kind of cooking. And we'll see you later this week.
All right, guys. Thanks for watching. Peace.